Jordan is a very inspiring human being. In today's show, we're going to talk to her about her spiritual journey, how yoga has impacted that journey as well, the Ghosh 84 yoga practice, and competitive yoga. So, got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Hope you enjoy the show. We'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back to our show. Today, sitting across from me is a woman that I've known for a little bit of time now, maybe like 6 months, less than a year, but
Yeah.
I've seen you a lot, but just have physically started to know you a little bit more. So Jordan Lydia Verla is sitting across from me, and Jordan is your practice is one of those practices that takes me out of my teaching practice. I've been lucky enough to have you in a few of my hatha classes, and the way that you practice and the flexibility that you have is something that we don't always need to strive for, but the fact that your body is allowing you to do the things that you can do is very breathtaking at times.
No, thank
To
you.
look over and when we're like cueing dancer pose, for example, and you look over and you're in full Lord of the Dance, you like either have your foot to your face or you're full split. It's so impressive to
Thank
watch.
you.
And everybody's practice is impressive to watch at every stage. I don't want to discount anybody's practice, but when you can see the full capability of the human body in somebody's practice and what can be accomplished, it's beautiful to watch. And
Thank
so
you.
with that, you are also an energy healer, and just received your second level of Reiki attunement, which is beautiful. And and the word that you used is just the best word I've heard in so long, that you are a witchepreneur.
Yes.
I love it so much. I love the practice of Wiccan. I love the idea of witchery. I love that strong feminine idea is being brought back into that and not being like shunned or looked aside. It's like, no, we are witches. We are proud of being witches. We are powerful women.
Yes.
And this is what we're going to do.
Yes.
And I've for you, knowing you that you're like that, and my girlfriend and her friends are very embracing of that witchery kind of idea. It's so beautiful to watch. So
Yes.
I'm so excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
And you so you've been practicing for a little over 10 years, right? And have received your teacher training in various different levels of yoga. And but one of the levels that is just so astounding to me, and it's something I've been newly introduced to by a mutual friend of ours, Larissa Anderson, who's been on the show before, which is the Ghosh series of yoga, and it's a 84 pose class.
Yes.
And so when I first saw the poster of the poses, because I take hatha all the time, I love hatha, and hatha is a great practice for me. And for just to clarify something in the Pacific Northwest, what we call hatha up here is basically the Bikram series that's shortened into a 60-minute series. 26 poses, roughly done twice. There's some leniency given because it's not a full 90-minute practice, but it's very reminiscent of what the Bikram style would be. I think the name switched to hatha when the fallout from Bikram kind of happened in
Yes.
2013.
Yes.
So I don't know it as any different because I didn't start practicing about till 2012. But does that sound about right as far as like
totally.
okay.
The Bikram bubble burst in like 2013, and then there was a rebranding effort, I would say, in all the Bikram studios. But I was definitely a little Bikram baby.
Yeah.
And my first yoga studio I started at was Bikram Yoga Everett, and my studio owner was Yu Wang, and I call her my tiger mama. And it was, all day Bikram yoga classes. That was the only style that was offered. And then 2013 happened, and then studios kind of rebranded and started to incorporate different styles of yoga, which, it was really good for expansion and to be able to offer, different kind of comprehensive systems for people, including like vinyasa and yin yoga as well. And I also teach yin yoga.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I think that was an opportunity for a lot of the asana type studios to kind of rebrand themselves, take the strange carpet out of the Bikram, branded studios, which was you can still find sometimes.
Well, but like you knew you loved the Bikram yoga so much because you would practice in a sweaty carpet room. Like, that's how much you loved the yoga. Like, you knew that you really loved it because you were willing to suffer for that.
Yes, you were. Yeah. I know. The first few studios I practiced in were the converted studios into like Power or Vinyasa or non-branded Bikram studios. But I remember the first Bikram studio I went to was in Renton Hot Yoga at the time.
Yes.
And I walked in and I'm like, what am I walking on right now? What is this? And I looked down, I'm like, oh, this is the carpet they keep talking about. Like,
Yes.
Holy crap. Like, it's in a whole, and the studio was big there too. It was probably like 1,000 square foot studio. It's like all carpeted.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it was good to get rid of those magic carpets out of the way. Yeah.
So with the Ghosh practice, you're going over a little bit downstairs with me, and I was completely unaware of the lineage and where it came from, and so do you mind going over a little bit of?
Yes, absolutely. So the Bikram series, or the 26 postures, were actually derived from a series of 84 postures by Vishnu Ghosh. And Vishnu Ghosh was the younger brother of Paramahansa Yogananda and the guru of Bikram. And actually, originally there was a book called Yoga Cure by Ghosh that consisted of 32 postures, which most of the 26 were in as well. So this is essentially the Bikram series itself is derived from that. And as a practitioner of Bikram yoga, and a lot of people don't, want to talk about it or this or that, I did have a lot of existential crisis in practicing this with a fallen guru, and I feel like there's a fallen guru in almost every lineage, but reappropriating the lineage back to its roots helped to kind of stabilize this system that I had witnessed transform so many people's lives, so many people's bodies, and it is really such a powerful therapeutic practice in itself. But the 84 series is sometimes known as the advanced series. I don't like calling it the advanced series because I feel like it's an all levels practice, and if you do it setup by setup, then eventually it becomes more accessible to you. And I originally got into the 84 series because at the Bikram Yoga Everett studio there was a poster, and on the poster was Joseph Encina, who was the 2010 world champion. And his story is incredible. He had rheumatoid arthritis as a child, 4 knee surgeries, a heart attack when he was 14 years old.
Holy cow.
He started yoga because it was one of the only things physically that he could do. His parents were afraid of him doing any kind of other sport, especially in Texas where everybody was doing sports. And within 6 years, he transformed his whole entire body and became the world yoga champion. So he had a poster called Progression of a Yoga Champion, and I remember looking that at the studio and was just like, wow, just amazed. And so within a month of practicing yoga, they talked about the yoga championships, and I was like, I want to do that.
Okay.
That desire just originated in my heart. I had only been practicing a month. I wasn't flexible at the time. My studio owner would say that I was stiff as sticks. That's what she used to say, like, you're stiff as sticks. Yeah. And she told me that I should go down to Larissa's studio and practice the 84, because that's how the competitors used to kind of prepare for the championships. And so I went, and when you're in that space and you can see other people do things, it's because that's within your field of awareness. That means that it's possible for you, and that your consciousness has expanded enough to allow it in, even if it's not embodied yet in your body. So if you see somebody else can do something, that means it's within your field of potentiality. And so I started doing the 84 practice just a few months after I started doing the 26 practice. Okay. And there is something so magical about that series. Anybody who's practiced it can affirm that it's a very intimate group of people. It's a little bit more playful, and we kind of joke and talk back and very sassy, and you get very comfortable with failure, meaning that you take your body to that point of failure, and then it makes the adjustments and the adaptations. That's where your consciousness expands, because you're always pushing into that place of failure and you're very comfortable with it. And I I just completely fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And I was actually religious at the time.
Okay.
And I feel emotionally I'd left, I was raised Mormon, but I felt like emotionally I'd left a long time ago. But there was such a stark contrast for me. I was like, why do I feel God when I'm on my sweaty yoga mat, lying in here in a heap of exhaustion, and I don't feel God in a church? And I'm not saying that you can't in those ways,
Right,
but
yeah.
for me, I feel like everybody has spiritual rights, meaning that they can connect to the divine or lack thereof in the way that's ever suitable for them. And I felt like my soul was in chains in kind of a institutionalized way of connecting with the divine.
Yeah.
And so for me, 84 kind of became my temple. It became my worship. And yes, and then obviously I got into yoga demonstrations as well, or yoga championships, or competitive yoga. I don't use that word competitor intentionally, but we'll just go ahead and throw it out here. And I did my first yoga, quote unquote, competition, I would say just probably 9 months after starting yoga, and Larissa was my coach at the time, and I came in dead last in Washington.
Okay.
And it didn't matter though. I got off stage and I hugged Larissa, and it was just like this beautiful confidence boosting experience for me of openness and vulnerability, and just being in that place to offer myself to community. From there, I kind of just dove into the rabbit hole and went on this journey of chasing the yoga, or chasing source, I would say, through the yoga. And I've become connected with people across the globe, gone to trainings, all this stuff in pursuit of this dream, which my dream, I started saying back in 2012, I want to be the world yoga champion.
Okay.
And you would not have picked me out of a lineup. You would have like looked at, if I was on the fence for dodgeball or yoga champion, you would have looked me over and been like, not her, not her. But I just kept persisting in, I want to be the world yoga champion. And that was my heart song. And so the people and the places and the resources started to come to me, and I was inspired to, connect with this person and go to this training, and then led to this other one, and, just building that momentum over the time, and getting to the place I am now. And like you were speaking about my practice, I do know that there's like kind of this resistance sometimes towards people having a deep asana practice as attachment to the ego. But for me, it's like, this is my art.
Right, yeah.
This is I paint with my body. This is my canvas, and I explore the depth in the posture because it's not, I could be in the back of the room. I don't need anybody to see it. It's for me.
Yes.
And that's like the true embodiment of an artist, is that they do the process for themselves, because the journey and the destination, it's all one and the same. And when you fall in love with that journey, that it just keeps you in flow state.
Definitely.
And so for me, that's been part of it. And the more I purified my mind, the more open my body has become.
Definitely.
And I had scoliosis in my spine when I first started, and I had a lot of people growing up in some physical therapy and people telling me certain things about my body that I probably wouldn't be able to do, and just continually destroying any limits of what I can do or can't do. And that's been that process for me, that vehicle of transformation through the yoga championships and through the platform of that as well. And it is so fun. And I think part of the 84 is that it's a place, when I lead 84, I feel like I'm in love. That state of being in love or in unconditional joy. And because you're in that frequency of joy, things just flow. Your body just opens, and postures materialize in a way it's a quickening process.
Yes.
I really love David Hawking's map of consciousness.
Okay.
So when you're at the lowest level of consciousness is shame.
Okay.
And fear. And then you go up, and neutrality switches you between force and power. And So when you're in a state of joy, you're at this complete expanded state. And so your awareness expands. So you'll have insights, illumination, and inspiration on how to connect with your body in order for your body to perform the postures. So it's not necessarily through brute force.
Right, yeah.
It's because your mind is open to a state to allow for that input, that channeling of information from your higher self to come in to be like, maybe I should shift my weight over into this a little bit more. We can breathe into this position a little bit more. And while I do believe in working hard, I've definitely quote unquote worked hard and been persistent, but when you fall in love with the journey, you don't feel like you're working hard. You're just doing it.
Right.
But it is about persistence and consistency and showing up. And sometimes my students ask, I want to be able to do what you do. How do I do it? I said, just keep showing up for 10 years.
There you go,
5 days a week.
yeah.
Just keep showing up. You'll do it. It could happen quicker. And additionally, I'm going a little tangent here, but additionally, as teachers, our job is actually to quicken the process for our students. So something that took me maybe 7 years to achieve, now that I understand and I have the knowing in my tissues, I can transfer that information to my students and quicken their process as well. So
that's beautiful. And I think that's the sign of a good teacher, is knowing when the information's ready to be given to the student and how hard to push and how much to let up. You know, and that's when you have a good teacher. And a lot of the journey that I've been on recently with my spiritual journey has been more or less myself, and I'm not discounting any of the help that I've had, but I haven't had like a formal teacher. I've definitely had people helping me, like Tang is my meditation guide, Holly is my medium that I meet with, so I have all these people that help me, but that's been more recent. And as much as I didn't realize it until probably the last couple of years, is that I was leading by a lot of my intuition. And the intuition for me was something that was an atrophied muscle. It was something I had to so I didn't even realize I was using my intuition in the beginning. And, but hearing you talk about your practice and the way that you teach and the way that the poses manifest inside your body, it does sound like you're intuitively practicing your practice. Like from the idea of, what you were saying, not this style practice. I didn't want to move towards that style. I wanted to move towards this one, and that's your intuition, just like showing you to hey, like not that, but this. And then your intuition again saying, hey, cool. Now this is where you started with the pose. Now, if you push into the ball of your left foot and maybe kick back into your right arm and then maybe just transfer the weight and then, now we got some more. And that, and I believe that, when we can identify that we're starting to use our intuition, that we know that we're strengthening our intuition. And that intuitive moment that we have and those intuitions that we have are so important that when we start to trust them. And that's a great way to find that trust, is by having that moment in your practice, listening to that moment and seeing how that manifests and be like, oh my gosh, that really helped me a lot in this pose. Strengthen your intuition, right? Now you're a little bit stronger there. Love that. There was another thing you said too about not knowing you can do something until you see it. That is such a good statement. I when I first started practicing yoga, I was very overweight. So right now I'm about 150. I was 230 at the time. Very out of shape, bad back, all the stuff, So I went into yoga for a lot of the repair reasons. And I remember I practiced next to this guy named Austin, and he was a bigger guy, taller than me, not like heavy set, but just taller, broader shouldered than me. And I practiced next to him for a while, and I remember one day I saw him go into a full bind from a side angle. And I'm like, I had no idea that was a thing. I didn't know a person of that size can do it. And if they can do it, I can figure this out. And that was such a boost of confidence. I think about that moment all the time. And that was probably 6 months into my practice. And from that moment on, it was like, nothing's in my way. If I can't do it, my body will let me know. But from now, it's just me getting my body ready to get to the poses that I want to really figure out.
Exactly.
And that was a huge aha moment for me.
Exactly. Yeah, that purification of the mind, and that somebody's within your realm of possibility. And so for me, looking at that poster, that was within my realm of possibility, and I took it, and I just wanted to move towards it. And I do think it's interesting. My first few years of practicing, I would say that there was a lot of hard work in it, and practicing from a state of I had a lot of sadness and a lot of anger I was moving through, and so it felt like hard work, and class was very hard, and that's okay too. But I can look back in terms of my practice and see the effort matching the consciousness I was in. And so now when I practice, it's like art, it's joy, it's love. And it feels very effortless for me.
Yeah.
Like, not that I'm not being vigorously exercised, but it's this state of effortlessness. Or I'm sure when people have entered into flow state on something you're working on, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, 4 hours have passed. Like, whoa, it's time to go to bed or something like that. So getting into that state of flow with my practice is really something I love and enjoy right now. And yeah, it's been really magical. And I would say the 84 series just really has been my home and my family and community and joy. And it helped to really take me through, I separated from my ex-husband 3 years ago, and it took me through that whole process. And for 2 hours during my week, I was in a place where I could be totally present and just complete and whole and feel that. And I felt like my whole soul was like shattered, and it was a place where I felt whole. And so I think it kept that boundary, periphery, essence, aura of my body intact for me to move through it. And it was really beautiful. And then when the great pause happened in March of 2020, and everybody disappeared from my reality completely. I was actually on my own for 40 days.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, Christ was on his own for 40 days, or fasted for 40 days.
There you
Like,
go, yeah.
I am energetically fasting everybody out of my system.
Okay.
And I realized that I had manifested the solitude in order to give my full attention to myself in that moment. And at first I hated it. I was like, this is awful. I'm lonely and miserable. And then towards the middle and the end, I was like, I'm going to make quarantine an art form. I'm going to go to the park. I'm going to dance. I'm going to do this and really embrace that process. And now I kind of look back on it with nostalgic, and it allowed me to return to the frequency of myself. And I didn't realize how many other kind of energies I was absorbing, because I was in a place of moving through a lot of stuff. And so I didn't feel like my aura was totally contained at that time. But it was difficult to not have the 84 at that time. And then to also know that I am the 84. And of course, I still practice it at home. For me, it's my foundational practice. It's like the 26 would be for people. So it's a magical lineage. I think everybody should try it. I teach the class inclusive, therapeutic, and even if you can't do the postures, you're still energetically receiving it and expanding your consciousness as well.
And I think that's a really important statement to make is, with the asana practice of yoga, we don't have to be able to do all the things to be quote unquote successful with the practice. Literally going into practice sometimes and laying in shavasana for 60 minutes is a beautiful practice too. So if you have the ability to go and take a class, even if you can't do all the things, watch asana is one of my favorite poses.
Yes,
when you can't do a thing, you look around and see what the human body's capable of. And not just in the full, people doing the full pose. You see people working within their own anatomy, doing the pose the best of their ability. And that is super inspiring to know that hey, last week you couldn't even barely put your right foot on your left knee, but now your right foot's all the way in your left hip crease. Celebrate that. That's fantastic.
Yes.
That's such a good spot,
Yes.
And, that's the celebration of the human body. We're all at different places. All of our anatomy is different. We all have different injuries we're recouping from, whether physical or mental or something. And the yoga practice, whether the asana practice, the meditation practice of yoga, the science of yoga, they're all such beautiful practices to be a part of, and very, very healing.
And I feel like I always tell my students it's the 4-minute mile, meaning if one student gets that in the class, you're going to get it next. It's within your possibility. And so to celebrate that when somebody else maybe gets something that you're working on or striving for, that means it's coming for you next, instead of switching that perspective as well. And I had a student, and my friend Eric, I call him the White Wizard. He used to come. He's 80 plus crowd. He used to come to the 84 and set up in the back, and kind of, he called it Isanomi. and he would kind of move into it how he wanted, but he would be there every week. And it's really beautiful.
Hell yeah.
So,
Love that.
yeah.
So you started doing the competition yoga, which is, again, you're not like to use the word competitive.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, and that, it's funny because when I first heard the word competitive yoga, I had a very bad taste in my mouth about it. I'm like, ugh, no, I don't like that at all. But I was very ignorant about it. I didn't know the full idea of it. I just heard the term, and I'm like, no, don't like it. And but then knowing people like yourself, knowing people like Larissa that have either competed or helped people compete in the competition yoga, it made a lot more sense to me. And so, do you mind going over a little bit of what you're feeling of and why competition yoga, again, competition, bad word, but why that is a practice now?
Yes. For me, it was definitely my vehicle of transformation.
Okay.
Because every time we have a desire, it's on the opposite side of our fears, and it's asking us to purify ourselves in order to receive that desire. And the quote-unquote competition yoga originated actually in India. I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, Americans always making everything competitive. But it actually came from India because it was a part of national identity and representing strength against British colonial rule for the Ghosh yogis. And Ghosh had students like Buddha Bose who would go, they'd meet up with Krishnamacharya, and they'd do kind of yoga offs or yoga demonstrations for each other and help to inspire people to practice the yoga. And it was just this way of yoga sport or identity and showing vitality and strength. So that is part of that lineage. And of course, there's definitely a tendency with anything for us to get competitive. People get competitive in class too. You can kind of feed off of that too. But for me, it's always been a competition of between my higher self and my ego. The ego who's going to hold you back from doing something and not risk failure and not risk vulnerability and not risk rejection and all those kind of things as well. And in this area of my life with yoga, I've gotten to the point where I really just don't give a fuck if I look like a fool. I just don't care anymore. There's other areas where I try and transfer that same mentality. And I started to call myself a yoga champion before I had even won a championship. Okay. And I've been the 5-time Washington State champion. Ooh. And then I placed in the top 10 in the U.S. twice. And I got invited to the World Championships in 3 weeks.
Nice.
And that's been a goal of mine for 9 years.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Persisting in it. But it was stepwise. It was okay, first I want to win Washington State. Okay, now I want to qualify for nationals. Now I want to get in the top 10. And so it's been this process, and I've demonstrated on stage, I think 16 times now. Wow. So each time though there is always some kind of short dark night of the soul. I would say it's not too long, but leading up to it, there's always some kind of extra purification process that you're looking at or going through. And when I'm on stage, I feel complete and total expansion because I am present and, as my coach would say, pure time, like nothing else. And it's just been this beautiful experience for me, and some of my deepest, closest friends have come through this. We will demonstrate with each other, or quote unquote compete with each other, and then go get tacos afterwards.
Nice. Yeah.
Or we help each other, and but it's that competition between the ego and the higher self, and it's like the Bhagavad Gita, how do you can fight and you can battle for those things that you need to. And that's been part of that process for me. And this past year at Nationals, I, in the semifinals, I placed 4th. And then in the final round, I made a mistake and dropped down from 4th to 9th.
Okay.
And that was the perfect medicine that I needed, because I had written down that I give a flawless performance and it moves the hearts of people, and when I got done with it, everybody was like, that was flawless, and I feel so moved. So it manifested perfectly.
Beautiful, yeah.
And in that moment, though, I realized that I made a little mistake, so I got a 0 on one of my postures, even though it looked completely flawless, like the performance of it. And I was like, this is good enough. Like, it's good enough. And wow, you were doing postures on stage that you held in your mind the vision of them for years. For years. Like, there were some postures that took me 7, 8 years to achieve in my body. And I kept that vision in my mind, even when my body didn't show it. So I was faithful to that vision that I held for myself.
Okay.
And it was funny because I thought I did it. I thought I finally won. And then my coach had to tell me right afterwards, like, that I made a mistake and, prepare me for it. And it was actually the best thing that could have happened to me in that moment, because it just really taught me so much. Like, I love and accept myself even when I make a mistake. I am good enough, exactly as I am. And then also to look at the abundance that I already did have. And I was doing these postures I always dreamed about that were, like I said, you wouldn't have thought that they could be in my body years ago. There were a lot of times when I would just work on postures and drag my nose across the floor, and get little like little rug burns, or just trying certain things. And I have a lot of pictures of that as well. But staying faithful to that vision in your heart, knowing that believing is seeing, not seeing is believing.
There you go.
It's believing is seeing. And it's been such a vehicle of transformation for me. And when you watch it, you can feel that inspiration.
Yeah.
Just through every competitor or every champion that gets on stage. And like I said, I started calling myself a champion. And what does it mean to be a champion? A champion is a much different mindset than a victim mindset.
Okay.
And so when you make that shift and you start to say, I am, I am, you invoke that, I am a champion, then you're going to be purifying your mind of any victim mindset. And there definitely have been times when I quote unquote felt like a victim or stayed in a victim state of consciousness. Definitely after my divorce, I was there for a while. I was like, and then finally I was like, what the fuck are you doing? You're a champion, Jordan.
Right.
And to transition out of that mindset and to start to look at myself, are you responding in a place right now as a champion? Or are you responding in a place right now as a victim? And I do feel, maybe this is more controversial, I do feel within the spiritual collective and the spiritual communities, there's a lot of disguised victim mindset in a way that looks like healing or like empowerment, but it's very cloaked victim mindset. Like, oh, that person's toxic, just like cut them out and move on. But you're constantly affirming like victimness by looking at the opposition. Whereas I've tried to take the approach, like at least these past couple years, what is this person reflecting in me?
Right.
I have to prune the vine in myself, not in them.
Yeah.
Thank you, that sucked. I didn't appreciate that. I'm going to cry a little bit.
Right.
But also, what do I need to shift in myself? And one of the things I've been saying too is like, I refuse to suffer over this. I'm going to change my relationship to it, because in Bikram yoga, hot yoga, Ghosh, we have this blazing heat that for some people would be completely torturous, and then we go in there, we're like, oh my gosh, the hot yoga studio is back open again. I feel like I can be alive, right? Because we changed our relationship to it. So I've been saying to things like, I refuse to suffer over this. I'm going to change my relationship to it. How am I relating to this? And what is it that it's offering? What is the message within this? And that's been part of my process, I would say, over this past time of the great pause in the world, is this purification on a deeper level in my consciousness and energy, and coming back to yoga competitions after break for COVID. I was like, it feels impossible, and my coach was like, all the energetic alignment you have done is more important than the physical action you could have done this past few years. And I did practice still, but it wasn't at the same kind of level or intensity that I was used to. So that's been part of my way of weaving through all that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think when we can, like you were talking about with the champion mindset and the victim mindset, you know, when we can really start to embody that idea, you start to learn and see that everything is a lesson. As hard as that statement is, even lessons where we are victimized in something, right? There's still a lesson that can be learned in that. Now, that doesn't mean that it's your fault that you've been a victim of, but there's still something that can be learned from that traumatic experience. That's a hard statement for a lot of people to hear, but when you can really look in and say, okay, so this thing happened for me instead of happened to me. How can I learn from this thing? Then you take yourself again out of that victim mentality. And you know, I've been doing for some reason, the Navy SEALs have really like entered into my mentality and a lot of the practices that they have. And one of the things I talk about is when you get into those disparaging moments, right, where you, like as a Navy SEAL, right, you could be in a place where like all of a sudden like the plan blows up and you're just being attacked and all this shit happens. You can cower, you can run, you can hide, or what they talk about is electing your team captain. Like bring that team captain up to know that that person is going to drive the shit out of you as a human being because it knows what you're capable of. And it's not an ego team captain. It's that knowledgeable, that knowledge of self team captain that knows that you're strong, that knows that you have capabilities, that knows that you're scared, but you're still going to do this thing. And I believe that's part of that knowledge of self when we can learn the lessons. You know, we have that person that we elect because that person is that stoic commander that we have that's going to take care of us and it's going to absorb the lessons that are learned and make sure that we're where we need to be. You know, so just it kind of draws a dotted line from what you're saying to that mentality that a lot of those, you know, elite special forces kind of folks use. And you know, there's, you know, even though that elite special forces are using it for more of a, you know, like a dominance kind of thing, you know, some would say protection, but you know, whatever you want to call it, there's still that strength of that person, right? And there's a lot of strength in the practices that a lot of people have that we can, you know, modify to fit our persons. And I, you know, for some reason, again, Navy SEAL has been drawn a lot to me. You know?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. It's
so with
inspiration, yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, and again, you know, like when we can cross over mentalities and ideas into different realms, you know, you take this, you know, seemingly violent mentality and put it into a spiritual realm, like they're all crossed over in a way. You know, it's like the spiritual warrior, like we were talking about with the Bhagavad Gita earlier. Arjuna didn't want to go fight his cousins and his family, but Krishna was like, "Nah, dude, you're cool. It's your heart's in the right place. Sometimes we got to fight.
Yeah,
this is the way it works, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna be held in a container of safety, and you will see your cousins and your family up there in heaven in that next realm, and they're gonna all hug you, and you're gonna be fine, right? But for right now in this realm, you got to fight for what you need, you know. And so yeah, it's beautiful. With can you kind of talk about the experience of like a competition yoga atmosphere, right? So what is, you talked about a sequence or a flow or okay, so so what is do you have like a set postures that you do, or is it like given to you and be like, Jordan, you're gonna do these things, make me proud?
So each year, it's like the rules have changed. They've been constantly expanding since I started. But right now, what it is there's 6 postures, and you do it within 3 minutes. And you need to hold the posture in stillness for 5 seconds. And you want to demonstrate all categories, which is strength, balance, flexibility. And then you demonstrate a posture that represents a twist, back bend, forward bend, traction, inversion, and then an arm balance as well. And then they have different levels of difficulty within those certain categories as well. And you try and do it all in 3 minutes.
Wow.
So it's quite adventurous. So it is very customizable to where you are as a practitioner, which is amazing because you'll have people up there for the first time and they can customize a forward fold to their level, and I can customize a forward fold to where I am in my practice. And so that's part of it as well. And then of course you get judged and scored on that, kind of similar to maybe like gymnastics and that effect. And there's no prize money. Don't like, we just do it for the glory.
Okay, right on.
But then backstage, you know, we kind of all hang out and warm up together, and each person has their process. And for me, my process is I listen to Jeff Buckley's Hallelujah on repeat.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
And that is actually just stored in my body vibrationally when I demonstrate. And that's the song that just like really resonates with me. And when I'm up there, that's kind of what I'm feeling as well. And this last time I demonstrated, I was like, my mantra was the grass is my guru. And I was connected to the grass at Juanita Beach, where I had practiced all during, you know, the quarantine. And just being in that space and feeling that love of the grass and the sky and the earth. And so that's kind of where the logistics of it are. Okay. And there's just different rounds and variations. And if anybody's interested, I'd love to help coach people as well, because I just think it's so transformational. And even if you don't decide I'm going to be world yoga champion, some people just do it once, but it creates this expansion for them, and they transfer that expanded state of awareness into any and multiple areas of their life. So it's truly transformational. Wow. Because it pushes you outside of, takes you from where you are to this new place of where you want to be. So, and you know that things are happening, like you said, not to you, for you, but through you. You know, and that's part of that process as well. So I feel like it's truly magical.
Yeah. I heard a gentleman talk one time a while back, and the talk he was given wasn't about yoga, but he had just like a little blurb about yoga in there, and I thought it was really, really fitting. But he said he was relating yoga to life, and he said with yoga, you put yourself in these awkward poses, and then you find your breath, and through the breath you find peace, and then you stop that pose and you find another awkward pose. You put yourself in that pose, and then you find your breath and you find peace. He's like, it's very, very much similar to life. You find yourself in awkward situations in life because you find your breath and you find peace. Yes. And then you step out into another realm of life. You find some awkwardness of life, and you're like, okay, here's my breath. Here's my peace. I'm going to be here in this moment. And that's, you know, that has sat with me so much, and it resonates on a daily basis, you know, from that correlation for me to yoga. And so with the demonstrations like you're talking about, that's, you know, finding that balance and that peace in even grander scale, because, you know, we all, you know, even the people that do compete in whatever realm that you compete in, you know, when the spotlight is on you, the nerves are there, the fluttery is there, right? And your imbalance shows up, and, you know, so finding your peace and finding your breath, and then just you're being in that place.
And there was, my friend shared this with me prior to the national championships this summer, where it was a performer put a plank. He was performing for a bunch of kids and put a plank up between two buildings and walked across the plank. And then he came down and he put the plank on the ground and walked across it. And he was like, it's the same plank. You just put it up higher. And so that's what I reminded myself. It's the same mat. I just put it up higher. Wow. And so you can be in that space of looking at it like, okay, like, and I remember thinking, it doesn't matter what happens. I'll be back practicing on Tuesday when I get home. Yep. You know, just that commitment to the journey and the joy. And of course, when I had that wobble, I did cry. I allowed myself to like cry afterwards. And people were like, well, you know, you deserve to win, or this person. I was like, it's not about anybody else. It was about me. And I just wanted to do my best in the moment. And that was enough. And being okay with whatever outcome happens. And like you said, finding peace in each moment and knowing that it's all just feedback. Right. And I'm a spin master because people, they're like, you're fucking crazy. That situation looks terrible. And I was like, well, actually, this is going to be the exact thing that's going to help me, or this or that. It's like, because we get to assign the meaning and the value to everything that happens to us. And so I take everything, I'm like, great, that's feedback. I can make this adjustment here. So when you fall out of a posture in terms of asana, it's feedback. That means I need to exert a little bit more effort in the opposite direction. I need to, if I'm falling forward, I need to kick back more, et cetera, et cetera. And I tell my students, be like Cardi B, fall 9 times, get up 10. That's all you got to do. And, so
Cardi B wisdom. You got to love it.
Yeah, like a little bit of thug in that too. And so that's part of it as well, is just really being comfortable with feedback. Feedback mechanism through yoga asana practice, I guess. But
that's beautiful.
I really love the championships. I love everybody that I've met through them. I've been, like, I feel emotional because I've been connected with thousands of people over the past 9 years through this journey, and some of the best teachers in the Bikram world. And I've trained with other yoga champions, and my coach, who lives in Joshua Tree, Kim Tang, she is just incredible, and she's, showed people possibilities too through her own practice as well. And that's all, it's all about the transformation of human consciousness. And if people look at it as a competition, I don't really give a fuck. Like for me, it's like, if you can't, if you're not there yet, that's okay too. To be able to see because we all see things through our lens and our perspective.
Right.
And I've done that too with things. We can only see it through the lens that we have and the perspective that we have. And one of the things I've been asking for lately is, whatever situations presented to me, help me see this through the eyes of love. Help me see this through loving awareness. How can I see this through a fresh perspective? I'm a new person. How can I see this person, place, situation with new eyes? And so we can only see where we are at a level of consciousness. And even with with the competitors, I can actually see where they are in their process of consciousness and hold space for that too. And I just feel like I've moved, like you said, into a state of peace, which is just, that's that state of allowance. It's right underneath what I call avatar consciousness, which is like total alignment. When we're in a state of peace, it's total expansion. And I believe somebody in a state of peace entrains 1 million other souls.
Oh.
So at a lower conscious level of shame.
Okay.
So they elevate them. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit because I think it's important. As a collective, as a global community, we've been in fear and shame for in the past couple years. And so as yoga practitioners, putting ourselves in a state of just neutrality, acceptance, love, joy, peace is elevating hundreds of thousands of souls. So our practice is very fundamental right now, and just moving into that state as well. And when everything first happened, one of the first things I just started saying is like, I'm free. I'm free. I'm free no matter what's happening. I'm free no matter what's happening. And I've felt that way this whole time.
Yeah.
Like I have felt free. It doesn't matter what's going on externally to me. Freedom is created inside of me. You can feel free in prison, or you can not feel free in the middle of a field.
Right.
It's whatever you're taking inside of you. So
yeah. Like we can only, we only view the world through our nervous system, right? Through our fingers, our eyes, our ears. But then, that's how we take in sensory information. But then we have our consciousness that processes that information. So you could have the clearest eyes, 20/20 vision, perfect hearing, nothing wrong with your senses, right? But, to like what you were talking about earlier, if your consciousness isn't at that pure point, or if your consciousness is going to muddy up the information that's coming in, then we need to do some work on the consciousness, right? Because if you are feeling and seeing and touching everything with as pureness as you can, but then as that information comes in, it gets processed by your consciousness, which isn't in a pure place, then that's bad information that's coming in. You know,
Right.
so doing that work on yourself, and nobody knows how to do that work except for you. You know, there's people like yourself who's Reiki level 2 now. I'm a Reiki master, sound healer. There's people out there to help you with the modalities. But we can't wave a wand and be like, you're healed. That's your hard work to do, and nobody's going to do that hard work except for you. So, you know, getting your consciousness to a place to where you're ready to embark on your healing journey, and knowing that a lot's going to change through that journey, right? The way that you think, the way that you present yourself, the way that you accept information. You might lose friends, you might gain friends, you know, you might feel ostracized for a long time, but that's all that part of the process of sweeping away all the shit that's no longer serving you and embracing the stuff that that really does. And it's a hard path. It's a hard road to walk, but getting that consciousness to the place to where you're ready to really absorb the information and then talk about the information, I think is a really important part.
Like you're saying, it's always filtered through the lens of our experience as well. And one of the things I realized too, after my divorce, is I was constantly saying, I'm healing, I'm healing, I'm healing, I'm healing. And then one day I was like, I need to claim I'm healed. Otherwise, I will be in this perpetual state of healing.
Right.
And then I kind of did feel that I shifted, but it was this shift in consciousness and knowing that nobody's going to save you except for yourself. And like you said, we can use these other people. They're essentially channeling source information to us to be presented to us. So a Reiki master or a yoga teacher, they're just channeling source and providing us with the information and the insight, and that's the medium that is coming through us. And like as a teacher, it's not my information.
Right.
It's source's information.
Totally.
I've just made myself a pure vessel and a pure conduit, and as a practitioner of, you know, various things, you know, I don't watch TV. I'm very careful about the music I listen to because I don't want to have any of this collective rubbish saturating myself as a channel. It feels very important for me to be aligned with that. But but it is really about us, quote unquote, doing the work. And I was thinking what you were saying too about being at peace. We always are going to want something. We're always going to desire something, which is great. Yeah. It's part of that. Our desires are on the other side of our fears, and that's by design. But it's also being at peace in the moment, knowing that, you know, I was thinking about the other day, the life I have now is the life I dreamed about years ago. But I still want more, which is fine. Yep. And also being in this place of peace, knowing that once you get a certain thing, you're going to want something else. So how can you find peace in the present moment? Right. And allow and accept and trust the process, which is, you know, definitely a favorite Bikram saying too. Like a lot in the community, everybody's like, trust the process. And I repeated that for years, not really understanding it. And then I was like, oh, you know, years later I was like, oh, yes, this process has purified me. I guess I have been trusting it. Yeah. Right. I just said it, but not really embodying it. And I think that too, sometimes that's part of the process as well, is that the things will form in the consciousness prior to embodying. Same with manifestation, which is to make the invisible visible. So it will be lingering in the consciousness before it actually becomes, appears in the physical form, the physical condensed energy. But yeah. No,
I for a long time, well, actually, I didn't realize I didn't love myself until about probably when I got attuned for Reiki. When you know, you get attuned, you do a lot of, I think it's 21 days of self Reiki, and through that process, I realized I was just an asshole to myself for a long time. But you know, finding that love for oneself and finding that imperfectness, you know, and being okay with not believing it at first. And that was my big thing, is like, I read a book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It.
I read that too. That's amazing.
Such a good book.
Yes.
And so, you know, his process was, I love myself, thank you. Tell yourself, inhale, look at yourself in the eye of the mirror. And for the first maybe 3 months I did it, I'm like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I love myself. Thank you. I love myself. Thank you. I don't believe it at all. And then finally one day I found myself crying saying it. I'm like, oh shit, I'm actually believing this now.
Yes.
You know, and so I think that's a lot of it too, is we might not believe ourselves when we first first started practice. We might not have that, like for yoga, for example, right? When I first started yoga, I couldn't even see my toes, let alone touch them. But I knew they were there, right? And so I kept trying, and then one day I touched them. Same thing. It's like we might not believe what we're saying to ourselves. We might not believe that we're worthy, that we're enough, that we do love ourselves. But say it. Start saying it, because down deep you know it. And you just need to convince yourself, right? And so the more you say it, the more you'll start to believe that stuff.
Yes. I love that book as well. I read that right after I separated. And so, like, for me, too, I just was walking around for 3 months being like, I love myself. And right now I feel like I'm in the pit of fucking despair, but I love myself. And then, like, one day it just, like, clicked. And I was like, no, I do love myself. And now I say, like, I love everyone. Everyone loves me. I love myself, and I'm not afraid to be alone. Meaning, like, because sometimes we're afraid to be alone, meaning not in a relationship, but we can also be afraid to be alone in a relationship. And the fear of being alone is actually the fear of being left with our own thoughts. So if our thoughts are a beautiful garden, through that purification of the mind and what we tell ourselves, we won't be afraid to be alone.
Yeah.
And I think that this past year has really taught me that, because I've spent a lot of time on my own. Like, okay, I'm actually not afraid to be alone. Now that I've purified my mind even more. And what you were saying too kind of touches on a lot of the work that I've been doing for myself personally. People are like, well, how have you been spending your time? It's like reprogramming my subconscious mind. What have you been doing?
Right, exactly.
And changing my core beliefs, like I'm good enough, I'm worthy, I'm more than enough, I trust myself, I'm safe, I'm secure, and how much changes on the external level have shifted because I've been saying that consciously. But like, I didn't believe it at first, but I just kept saying it, and I just trusted in the unseen. And then one day it kind of clicks into place, and it just embodies in you, and you feel it, and it's a really beautiful process as well. So,
oh man, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you have time to talk about subliminal?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would love to talk about it. So subliminal meditations?
Yeah, so you can call them sleep meditations or subliminals. And so I'm trained in Yoga Nidra. And
Beautiful
Yoga Nidra
practice.
is this kind of similar practice as well. So the physical body is asleep and the mind's awake and alert. And through that we can go in there and shift the samskaras, or the limiting beliefs, limiting patterns, and purify it out like the phoenix does. So I started using them because I felt very traumatized after my divorce, and I started to spell before I would go to bed, SAFE, and just loop that before I would go to sleep. And then I started making and recording my own voice and saying different types of affirmations and listening to them. And then now I've listened to a bunch of other people's. Like each night I'm like, okay, which adventure are we going to go on? Am I going to use one of mine? I'm going to use this other person's, use this or not that. But what happens during that is our conscious mind, or the egoic mind, is asleep. And the portal of the subconscious is wide open. And our last sense, our sense of hearing, never shuts off, which is by design, because it was meant to keep us safe. So in that repetition while you're asleep, you're in this theta state. So it's kind of self-hypnosis, and you're able to really get in there and shift things quite rapidly. That would take maybe months of conscious affirming.
Okay.
And I did that I probably shifted maybe 10 to 20,000 beliefs over this past year. And I've been being like, well, when am I going to be done with it? I'm like, actually, you're probably never going to be done with it, because it's a constant purification. And I've been telling people, like, okay, now the beliefs I'm working on, like, I'm a priority, like, and I was like, well, these are luxury beliefs compared to I'm safe, I'm trusting. Like,
Right,
those are like the bedrock beliefs. Now I'm at a luxury belief. Like, this is a luxury one.
Yeah.
And so through that process, though, of changing core beliefs, I will not say it was like a very simple process, because what happens is no man can serve two masters, meaning that your subconscious mind will try to reject even the new belief, even if it serves you.
Oh, interesting.
Because the subconscious thrives or survives on familiarity. It doesn't thrive on it. but it survives on familiarity. And some of the ways that we think and some of the behaviors and patterns we have, we learned as defense mechanism or protection.
Right.
So you're asking your subconscious to be vulnerable when it learned it wasn't safe to be vulnerable. But who wants to live life like that?
Right.
So what can happen is there's actually this purging process that can happen. I could affirm that it doesn't, but your mind has like resistance. And there was a time during these past 6 months where I felt even more volatile, even more dysregulated, because I was constantly shifting between a person who is worthy and a person who's not worthy, a person who's good enough and a person who's not good enough. Whereas like my resting state before was like, I don't feel worthy, I don't feel good enough. And you don't know, it's like ER, you don't know that you're miserable until you get a little bit of Tigger in you, and then you're like, oh, like there's a little bit of a juxtaposition here, right? So you have the contrast, and then your reality, it's like turning the light on, and the cockroaches are going to scatter. They were always there, and now all these beliefs are coming up, and you're like, oh, that's always been there. You're just finally exterminating them.
Right.
So there would be just weird things that would happen in my reality when I was like moving through through certain ones, or I started affirming I'm worthy, and then I was at the airport practicing yoga, and some guy came up to me and was like, that's like so sinful what you're doing. So but it was like that old reality had to detox out. Or saying I'm whole and complete, and then watching things in reality start breaking around you. And then all of a sudden, you keep pushing through that. And then it's like, I am whole and complete, and it will physically manifest at that point. But it has to purge it out. It has to eliminate it out. It's like a detox of it as well. And I really love the teachings of Neville Goddard, who is law of assumption as opposed to law of attraction. And now I'm kind of actually getting back to law of attraction again, combined with law of assumption, I think is the potent medicine. Because you can feel good and not be changing your assumptions about the world around you. You can feel good and still hold the belief that you're not worthy.
Right.
You can still hold the assumption that things don't work out for you, even if you're feeling good. And then if you combine that together, that your main priority each day is to feel good, and you're worthy of this, and you're good enough for this, and things are always working out for you, then you're going to become a master of your reality. That combination of the two.
Yeah.
But Neville Goddard has a quote, when you cut off the head of the snake, it bleeds out for a little bit. So saying that when we shift an assumption or a belief, we're going to have a bleed out maybe for a little bit of the old stuff, because we've been telling ourselves this story for a long time.
Right.
Like you said, you walked around for months being like, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. And yet you didn't feel it at the time.
Yeah, totally.
And then it clicked into place a little bit later. So,
So with your explanation of that, I have this personal theory that I've gone through a couple times, as my spiritual, I don't want to call it awakening, but the process of my spirituality has been unfolding. I have these big barometers of things that I get past, like my mental stories that I've told myself. And right when I feel like I've gotten past that thing, I've all of a sudden get faced with it.
Exactly.
And my understanding of that was, okay, so this is new Adam with new mentality, new understanding of life, new tools, confronted with an old emotion. And so now utilizing all these tools that I have and this new mentality to see how this emotion, this feeling, this uncertainty, this story manifests, and how quickly I can either push past it, not believe it, or work my way to an understanding of like, that's not a reality.
Yes.
And so, and it just happens constantly like that. Like I check a box of like, cool, not feeling that anymore. And then like a week later, it's like, hey, guess what?
Yes.
Here's that feeling. You're like, oh shit. Okay, cool. Call my team captain up.
Yeah.
All my tools, get the tool bag out, and let's do this shit.
Exactly. Right? It's almost like your old belief system is going to reinforce, and are you choosing to respond from new Adam, the perspective of new Adam with this perception, or old Adam? And I've had that situation. Like I have things in my life now where I'm like, I'm not breaking character. I'm not going to respond how old Jordan
right?
or Jordan would. Old Jordan would be like, what the fuck, and new Jordan's like, this is feedback. I will take it. Thank you. But that being confronted with it and almost allowing that head of the snake to finally be, cut off and totally bleed out. But it's been an interesting process, and I make a lot of sleep meditations on my YouTube channel because I'm very passionate about it, because it's been one of the things that helps to transform me the quickest out of everything that I've done. I've done a lot of different healing modalities, and I love them all, and I'm grateful for it. But it's really quite remarkable. And right now I'm making sassy ones that I call like witch sleep meditations, like Sexy Witch and Boho Babe and Rich Witch, and they're like more playful chill hop stuff, but it's still those good affirmations. It's just with a little sass in it. And I'm making one called like the High Priestess and the Mystic, and just
following archetype kind of ideas.
Yeah, archetype, but it's really funny because they're all kind of aspects of my own personality, and there are a lot of the personal affirmations that I have kind of used, and I absolutely love words. Like, I love words. I'm a clairaudient. That's how inspiration comes to me, is through words. And I do psychic readings on different chats and websites and tarot readings, but it comes through me through words, and I've always loved words. Like when I was in college, I had quotes all over my door, and I had notebooks full of quotes and words and things I'd hear, and so now it kind of feels like it's all synthesizing together to come this way, and I love like witty ways of saying things. And one of the beliefs I was working on was actually, my mom came to me with a problem, and I was like, God damn it, Mom, like, I'm not tech support. Why do people always come to me in time of need? And then I was like, oh, I'm literally speaking that into existence. And so I was like, no, people come to me in time of need and in time of ease. Or, people come to me as I please, and like taking these things and challenging them as well. Or there's room for two givers in a relationship, instead of like saying, oh, relationships always give and take, or all my relationships are give take. So no, I'm like, no, all my relationships are give. I'm surrounded by givers. There's people come to me in their time of ease. People come to me with or without need, and just challenging these narratives, or my relationships can be on my terms too. Like, and listening to everything you're saying and knowing that it's not true unless you say it's true. There is no such thing. People are going to be like, you're crazy for saying this, but there's no such thing as a fact.
Okay.
There's no such thing as a fact, because you'll always be proven right by your assumption.
Confirmation bias.
That's confirmation bias. And I tell my students, if you say you can't, then you're right. If you say you can, then you can. And the universe will always be like, very well, so be it. So which one do you want to choose? And even in terms of our relationships and other people around us, like, I've transformed a lot of my relationships, even my relationship with my mom, through changing my assumptions, and even going back and like revising certain things in our relationship in my mind, and then noticing that express out onto the field of awareness. And it was really beautiful when she called and we had that exchange, and then she spent like the rest of the phone call helping me like figure out phrases for how to change this belief, and like look for affirmations and looking up in the dictionary and the thesaurus. And so I make these sleep meditations. I'm super passionate about it, and I would recommend, you don't have to use mine, but just find a self-love sleep meditation if you're moving through something, and start to notice the magic unfold, and really commit to sleeping with it on for, not just one time, just not 2 times. I've been sleeping with a mom for like 1.5 years because our nervous system and our neuroplasticity in our brain have been wired a certain way for maybe decades. And so you're undoing a lot of stuff within a span of months, which I think is so worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it. Do I want that for the next 30 years of my life? No, I don't want to think that way for the next 30 years of my life. And something else too, sorry I get really passionate, but I've been walking around for months being like, because I'm worthy, because I'm good enough, to everything that I've been doing, like, I can have this popsicle because I'm worthy. And then like I posted about it on Instagram, and then people were sending me popsicles, them taking popsicles and being like, because I'm worthy. Because that was just my way to start affirming everything. Everything I was doing, I was like, segment intending, like, oh, because I'm worthy, I can do this because I'm good enough, I'm treasured, etc., and starting to really reprogram my mind in that way. And my favorite affirmation right now is what I want wants me more.
Ooh,
because we can intend for something and then it's like order placed, order canceled, because I'm like, I intend for my body to be healthy. Oh, my body doesn't want to be healthy. So it's like you place the order with the universe and then you're like, canceled. But if I intend to be healthy and my body wants to be healthy, then you're in total alignment between your intention and your desire. And your desire wants you more.
Right.
So watch the magic unfold when you use what I want wants me more to everything you do. I want that. It wants me more.
Wants me more. I'm writing that down.
Yeah, that one's gold.
I love that. And I love you. You can't see it, but I did. You lit up like a Christmas tree whenever you said that. It was such a beautiful day. Oh man, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I want to honor your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
But I do want to have you back because there's so much more we want to talk about.
Yes, I would love to. I'm really grateful. Yeah.
Loved our conversation, and I can tell that you're passionate about humanity and about the healing process, and that's such a beautiful thing. I love the opportunity to get to know you better and to hear all the beautiful things that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
If I can be of any service, please let me know.
Yeah.
But I wish you what. So 3 weeks you're doing the competition?
So 20th and the 21st, and headed down to Joshua Tree, and I am just grateful. I am going to. Oh, okay. Well, actually, before I got the invite, I said to myself, maybe I'm okay if it never happens that I get to the World Championships. I just wanted the practice of a world yoga champion, and I had that, and nobody can take that from me. And I surrendered it, and then the next day I got the email, but I just made total peace with it. So I'm just excited to go and to share my art and my love and my passion for this. And I hope through my practice and my demonstration and my story that people know that joy is your birthright. Like, it is your birthright.
You're just leaving me with gems here today. Joy is your birthright. Oh my gosh. It definitely is. Well, I'm going to leave, so we're going to leave links for your YouTube channel. If there's a way to support you with the competition that you're going towards. So we'll leave links in the show notes for all this stuff, and also ways to connect with Jordan and myself. So, but thank you so much again, love. I appreciate you. Good luck with everything that you're doing, and we will talk again soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with Jordan and I. If you have any questions about the content we covered or want to reach out to us directly, we'll leave some links in the show notes. As always, thank you so much for the support. Please like the podcast, subscribe to it, and leave comments if you can. And we'll see you here next time. Obeisance and love to you all.